One is only limited by one's tools and, of course, one's imagination. I have no idea how the phrase gem cutting came into use. Sounds good, but the fact is one does not cut stone like bread or wood. One grinds away. The physics is impossible with the possible exception of using high-power water jet guns, but then you're still doing the same physics a cutter does, which is you grind. Its high-power water stream wears away the surface like millennia of alluvial water wear you often see on many of gem rough pieces from around the world. And the laser cutting that people always ask me about is actually a huge misnomer in gemstones. It is just not that feasible in colored gemstones because of heat sensitivity. When I use what we call a round circular diamond saw, you are still grinding away as thin as it may appear. It's all about grinding to varying degrees and then finer and finer sanding particles until you reach the polish in that particular gemstone. Every gemstone has its favorite method of grinding, sanding, and polishing. Diamond has become the superior abrasive, particularly in most cases for grinding and sanding. Then to achieve a polish, one can use diamond or a group of oxide powders such as cerium and aluminum oxide. This is one of the longest learning curves in being a master in gem cutting, learning and achieving a water-fine polish in an array of many different colored gemstone materials. The difference between diamond cutting and all other gemstones is diamond cuts all colored gemstones, but the only abrasive to cut diamond is another diamond. I will not get into faceting or cabbing since there is plenty of literature on these subjects, but so little is out there for the professional, let alone the public, on the subject of carving and the tools needed. One of the most important tools in a gem carver studio is a stationary spindle that holds your diamond tools to carve, sand, and polish with. When I first began back in 1976, I did not even know a machine like this existed. I started with what is called a flexible rotary shaft with motor, used virtually by every jeweler around the world. It is a variable speed motor with a long flexible shaft and a handheld handpiece with a Jacob's chuck to hold the tools. There are several limitations to carving with this type of machine. Though it is great for doing very, very detailed work in small sizes, it has other shortcomings. First, when working on larger size carvings like I do, one is constantly hitting up against a stone with the chuck portion of the handpiece. Basically, you need a really wide clearance when doing some very complicated style carving that I often do in my Fantasia style chalcedony carvings on my large objects of art. Another limitation with this style of carving is holding the handpiece with the diamond, but the other hand is holding the gemstone material. I find a lack of control with a handpiece style coupled with the stress my wrist would encounter from the years of carving would affect the longevity I have enjoyed in carving all these years. A real shortcoming to the rotary handpiece is that the further the tool extended, the greater the chance the diamond tool would not run dead true and wobble. Wobble in your diamond tool is deadly in that the chatter in the tool can easily damage the stone. Plus, it makes it extremely difficult to do any really fine detail. Another limitation is the handpiece can only hold certain types of tools in length and diameter of burr size, whereas a stationary spindle can hold virtually any size, type, or shape of tool, from the finest, smallest size burr to very large in diameter carving tools. And lastly, a flex shaft style carving is much slower in execution for a multiple of reasons than using a fixed arbor style. Mostly because with a fixed arbor, one can hold the stone with both hands and have freedom to rotate the stone in virtually all angles to the wheel. This is paramount in being able to create a beautiful carving in a reasonable time period, so the end result is still within what the industry is willing to pay. Mind you, if you're a hobbyist, you can take all the time in the world, but as a professional, I am mindful of the clock for what I can realize for my work, or when I am being commissioned by a professional jeweler or gem dealer, there is only so much they are willing to pay for the work at hand. The fixed arbor spindles I have employed in my studio were purchased from Adar Oberstein, where they have been engineered and perfected over centuries. At the time in 1986, I knew I needed to evolve past the flex shaft style and was researching how I could make my own type of fixed arbor spindle because there was none readily available that I could purchase in America. But once I ventured into the Valley of Adar and was invited to work alongside some of the greatest living masters, I quickly realized I did not need to reinvent the wheel all over again. I now have 3 very distinct types of spindles in my studio. The high-speed style Fortuna brand that back in those days sold in thousands just for the spindle housing. It was a very complex, multiple closed bearing type with a long extended shaft that allows a long reach and absolutely no wobble or vibration at the end of the attached diamond tool. These types of heavy-duty bearing housings are what we commonly use on very heavy-duty mill machines in a tool and dyed metal machine shop. The cost of this type of spindle does not include the large direct drive variable speed motor, the table it's mounted on, or the water catch pan that is required. The other 2 spindles I have in my studio are what are called Babbitt style spindles. They are also made in Adar Oberstein, and the design of these types have not changed for centuries. I have seen some antique versions that some of my friends' great-grandfathers used over 120 years ago. The only difference then was either they were powered by treadle foot pedaling or many water wheels that were used to generate power for centuries versus today's modern electrical motors with variable speed control. This ancient type of spindle goes back centuries. It does not have any ball bearings common in today's modern bearing house type spindles, but instead is an arbor shaft that rests in a lead formed housing around the shaft and is lubricated by oil. The beauty of this style spindle is that they can always run true versus the bearing style, which when it is running out of true, I had to take it to a mechanist to rebuild a couple of times over my 35 plus years working with it. With a Babbitt style, all I need to do is adjust the carriage screws that house the shaft around the lead and the spindle runs true as I need it to. I have 2 of these types of spindles in my studio. Each has a very specific purpose. One is a double shaft with a left and right side that I use for heavy-duty grinding and carving and can hold the heavy weight often associated with large steel-centered diamond wheels. They can also handle the torque at low speeds when grinding really tough material like chalcedony, agate, or jade. The beauty as well for this type of spindle is it can also perform perfectly if you're running a very small fine carving burr point and have it run dead true with no wobble. I have employed this very spindle in my workshop for over 30 years, and it runs as true today as it did the day I got it. I've never needed to service the spindle, just adjusted the carriage screws right there as I'm working, add a bit of fine motor oil for lubrication, and off I go with barely any loss of work time. This is a great spindle for any student who wants only one type that allows multiple versatile uses from large to small work. The other Babbitt style is a single directional shaft, scaled down in size, that is very commonly employed in Adar in the Cameo Intaglio studios. The smaller scale Babbitt spindle style I use exclusively for my Intaglio Cameo style carving and precision style carvings. I use my hand-shaped steel tools that I charge with different diamond slurries that I mix in my studio for a heavier concentration of diamond particles than the over-the-counter commercial pre-mixed diamond compounds. With this spindle, I do not run water as a lubricant, but a fine, light, clear mineral style oil for lubrication and flushing of the gemstone as it is ground away. All 3 spindles have between several inches to over a foot reach from the arbor house to the actual fine diamond tip. The huge advantage over this versus the rotary style flex shaft is that I can literally carve very deeply into a cavity of the stone with absolutely no worry of the end of the shaft bumping up against the stone. I have carved chalices and bowls with a depth of 8 inches and have not had a single issue. The other major advantage I've mentioned above is I can hold the gemstone with both hands, bring it up to the carving tool, and have maximum control and versatility while carving. This same style of carving with a similar spindle is also used in the glass crystal style of etched glass design in stemware and bowls. Included with the basic spindle, one needs a huge assortment of various center diamond tools that can run in the hundreds if not thousands of dollars per tool. So I calculate to start a basic professional carving studio, one needs to minimally invest around $10,000 to $12,000. Of course, a new student or hobbyist can invest a lot less to get started. I feel to create the type of work and speed in which to create my pieces as a professional, one needs to invest thousands in spindles, diamond tools, faceting laps of assorted mesh diamond powders. One is only limited by one's tools and, of course, one's